Well, I don't know how many of you are familiar with this book. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with how much work went into this book. And in fact, there's some Atlas people here who participated and did Atlas blocks for the first project. I know Ken was involved and several others perhaps that I'm not aware of. So put a lot of time and effort into documenting the breeding birds of Wisconsin. Tonight we happen to have, they're doing it again. It was so much fun they're going to redo it. And we have two of the project coordinators, Bill Mueller from the Great, let me get this right because I always get it wrong, the Western Great Lakes Bird Observatory, the staff ornithologist there, and Mike Reese, local naturalist, photographer, and he has volunteered to the WSO, Wisconsin Society for Ornithology, to be the volunteer coordinator for this, and that's no small task. It's a good thing you're retired.
Yes,
definitely. Bill has been, Bill has been very active in the WSO, and in fact served as conservation chair and put out a lot of really good information for those of you who run the BirdNet, and you're probably familiar with some of the things he's done. He's also very active with the Wisconsin Bird Conservation Initiative, and one thing that I thought was very interesting is the Biome Project partnership in the University of Milwaukee, I believe, professors and lots of volunteers, and they're studying together with actually even, which I'm not sure how this came in to be, the University of Hawaii also, and Milwaukee Urban Ecology Center studying urban stopover habitat, which is critical. We did a project along those lines here a few years ago, a small study of urban stopover habitats in general, but focused on urban areas. Currently, he is serving as project coordinator, volunteer coordinator. Mike Reese has been in our programs, local guy. He's a great photographer. Anybody who has seen the book, the field guide to the damselflies of northern Wisconsin, most of the photographs were taken by Mike. He has a website, butterflies, and I'm not sure about robber flies and tiger beetles. His website is wisconsinbutterflies.org. You should go there. He's a great photographer. Also a great bird, and I've had the pleasure of getting to know him over the last few years. So, if you're going to give us a brief background of what's going on with this new book. And this book, by the way, I was supposed to mention, or I should mention, is still very valuable, and if you go to the Wisconsin Society of Ornithology website, it's discounted 50%. So, and it's still got a lot of valuable information, and you can see Bill afterwards if you want any more details on the WSO bookstore. So, gentlemen.
thank you. Just a little bit more business to conduct. If you cast your eyes over to our display on the side of the room over here, there's a copy of the Atlas book. Unfortunately, I don't have any with me for sale this evening, but feel free to take a look at that copy. We've also got Atlas brochures there. We brought a lot of them, so feel free to take one. It gives you a little bit more information. Who knows? Michael and I have been doing this a lot, but we may forget to tell you some hidden aspect or other of the Atlas, and maybe you'll find it in the brochure. Then there's a handout about the Noel J. Cutright Legacy Fund, which is devoted to the Atlas. There's a copy of the Atlas Handbook. We would appreciate it if you do not take that with you, because it's about 45 pages long, and we don't really like printing more than we have to. Then there's another flyer about birds of North America. If you're familiar with that, that's a great reference. It's absolutely useful for the Atlas, but for many other things. And participating in the Atlas is one way that you can get a subscription to BNA at a much lower rate than you ordinarily could. Then there's a brochure from my organization, the Western Great Lakes Bird and Bat Observatory, and an envelope in case you feel generous and you'd like to donate to our organization. I wonder if somebody could turn a few more lights out. So we're going to try to give you some history of Atlas 1 and why Atlas 2 is different. You know, it's the new and improved Atlas, I guess you might say, if you know familiar with that old advertising lingo. As Jerry mentioned, Mike is Director of Volunteers for the Atlas, and I can't tell you how important of a job that is. I'm involved in the Atlas. I'm on 4 of the 6 committees. I do field work on the Atlas. I do fundraising for the Atlas. I kind of have Atlas in my blood. And that's partly because my boss, Noel, who many of you knew, who passed away a couple of years ago, you might say Noel put his hands around my neck metaphorically and said, "You will work on the Atlas. You will promote it." And I said, "Yes, sir." And I've been doing that ever since. So we'll try to answer all your questions. And if you're left with any at the end, we certainly hope that you'll stop and collar us at the end and ask us. Now, way back before Atlas 1, there's a person in this photograph. Some of you may have known him as well. Reverend Samuel Robbins, really what many people consider one of the grandfathers of modern day ornithology in Wisconsin, wrote this book, Wisconsin Bird Life, spent 25 years working on that. In that book and a series of articles that Sam published, he generated what he called 100 questions, unanswered questions about ornithology in Wisconsin. And I'm sure he could have made an even longer list. But as part of that 100 questions, you might say he led us toward the development of Atlas 1. He didn't live to see the end of it, but we owe him a big debt. Here he is with his brothers. Chandler was the person who developed and originated the Federal Breeding Bird Survey, and their brother Roger. So that was the terrible threesome of birders. You can imagine what their household was like when they were elementary school boys. They were bird crazy from that age and never looked back.
So the first atlas information started in 1993. Took a couple years of planning, and it was meant to be a 5-year project, but it was not completed on what they wanted to get done in the 5 years, and so they extended it 1 year. So at that time, everything was done by hand. Everything was written on cards. They had to get it to the regional coordinator, who then double-checked it and then sent it in. And then somebody that didn't know what they were doing just typed stuff in. So, there was a lot of places along the line where there could have been some errors, but, they did the best they could. And it took, after all that data got in, it still took a couple years before it was going to be published. There was problems with publishing of that, and it didn't get published until 2006. So it was a long period of time from when it started to when it was finally published, but we're hoping that this time we speed things up a little bit. And so this is okay. So although it did take us actually more than 2 years of discussion and trying to get ready for this, but one of the things that we're learning now is that we're already planning for the third one. So we're trying to make sure that we do things and keep them in places where people can find the information that we did and what we did and how we did it much easier than what we had to work with. So, but we expect that we'll have just 5 years, and analysis really can take place right away because this information is not on pieces of paper. It's going right into eBird. You can look at and see everything that we've gotten in already, and it's fabulous to be able to go back there and take a look. So,
In the world of book publishing today, another point of interest for some of you, we had 3,000 copies printed. What that meant is that there was a storage place somewhere with 3,000 books, right? And WSO was on the hook for all of that, and we still have a significant number of those copies, so please do buy one. It's an incredible bargain at $20. There's so much work that went into the development of that book. Unless you're familiar with it, you won't believe it unless you actually get a copy and look at it. But when this next book comes around, we may do what's called today print on demand, right? We may not print 3,000 copies, we probably won't. Maybe we'll print 100, and we'll sell that 100, and if you say, I want a copy, you place an order, we'll print one and send it to you. That way we won't have this big inventory of expensive books lying around. So a really important part of this is how the heck are we going to pay for it all? Because when this project is done, it's going to have cost about between $800,000 and $900,000, close to $1 million. Big project, a lot of work. Some of it is paid. You know, some of the more difficult areas of the state will be surveyed by paid atlasers. You know, if you're all birders, you know what it's like. If you go in a big conifer swamp and you go any distance away from the edge, you may be reluctant to proceed because the water's up to here and there's, you know, 10,000 mosquitoes and poison sumac. So that's why we pay people to go into those places. You know, with a paycheck, they're much less reluctant to do it, right? But there's a lot of other parts of this that require funding as well. First time around, we had all this alphabet soup of all these government agencies who were involved, plus a lot of great Wisconsin foundations, non-governmental organizations, and some businesses also involved. We're hoping all of those same organizations and many more will get involved this time. We had a really successful first year for the Atlas in many ways, and fundraising is certainly one of them. We latched on to the former executive director of the Natural Resources Foundation, who now is doing things on a freelance basis, Charlie Luthen. He's been our grant writer this year, and he's done a fabulous job. He and Carl Schwartz put together the details of a sponsor a species effort. We're going to tell you more about that. And there, again, if you look at my my display over there, you'll see all of the remaining species that are yet to be sponsored.
And so, again, your group, thank you, has paid for the short-eared owl.
Right.
So thank you.
And one of your members, just in the last 24 hours, sponsored evening grosbeak. And a couple of weeks ago, somebody added green-winged teal. So, but there's still several dozen species that have yet to be sponsored. We don't want them to be the poor cousin birds who are kind of left at the end, right? So this is a huge citizen science effort. The biggest citizen science project ever in the history of the state of Wisconsin. So lots of people have a role in this, all the way from very casual atlasers that only may submit a few records to the real diehards, people like Bob Domagalski. Again, you know, if I say I have atlasing in my blood, I'm like kindergarten compared to Bob. Because, you know, Bob just does a fantastic job every time this kind of a project comes up. And then a team of about 50 or 60 people who are on all of the committees, from the science committee to the development committee. So lots of people involved and the need for a lot of fundraising. So we have to talk about these three people because they were really the mainstays of Atlas One. Many of you know my former boss, Dr. Cutright, Betty Harriman, who has been at every level of the Wisconsin Society for Ornithology. She held multiple positions on its board of directors. She just retired as co-editor of the Passenger Pigeon earlier this year. And Dr. Bob Howe, director of the Coffin Center for Biodiversity at UW Green Bay. Bob is involved again, somewhat less so than he was first time around. Betty is giving us advice, but you know, 2.5 years ago when we were talking about this, we went to Betty and asked her kind of, are you willing to do some of the things that you did during Atlas One? She had an easy answer for us, and it only had 2 letters. So, you know, when we talk about the geography of an atlas, right? An atlas is a geographer's work. And I don't know if you've ever seen an image like this before, but it shows all the topographic quadrangles in the state. And Michael, take it away. You talk about Center East.
One of the things that we needed to do was we had to you can't survey the whole block. So we chose, I think randomly the first time, Center East as the block in that quad that we would use as a priority block. So every single quad that's in your county has one priority block in it, the Center East. So there's 14 of those in your county, and then there's 2 specialty blocks also. So you got 16 in Portage County that we'll be doing, that need to be done. But that doesn't mean that that's the only place that you would atlas. It just means that those are the things that we did the first time. And so in order to compare what we're going to do this time, we have to do the same areas. So,
But don't get the idea that's the only place you should atlas. You can atlas anywhere you want in the state of Wisconsin. No restrictions on that. But we do have to do all of those priority blocks again. So that's the first place we want to have done. So during Atlas 1, 226 species in the state were confirmed. Another 9 were not confirmed. We got close to being confirmed, but we weren't able to quite get that level of information that we wanted. And so we denote those as probables. And I don't know why.
Windows is not genuine.
Windows is giving me grief here.
Okay.
And only 2 were possibles.
So for this one, I don't have a slide, but we already have 212 confirmed species. One of the ones that we don't have is the short-eared owl yet. Although I felt that they could have been there, this year because they were there way late into May at Buena Vista this year. So.
For some reason, it's not letting me change the slide.
Which is
It's
bizarre.
technical difficulties.
As
Yeah.
usual.
Here, I thought that using arrow keys would help me, but
That's the fun of computers.
no, that's not it.
I'll just let Bill look at it.
Very strange.
The escape key. Time for a question?
Arrows work yet?
No, they're not working.
Any questions?
Yeah. Why the short-eared owl hasn't been confirmed, and that is because it wasn't in that sector of the county. The county, the sector that covers Buena Vista didn't include any good habitat for this short-eared owl, or what happened?
I don't think there just wasn't anybody that got into that area. Now, I know that, I don't know if you guys know Ann and Scott Swingle. They do butterfly research, and they also do grassland bird surveys. So they put an article in Passenger Pigeon not too long ago talking about short-eared owls that they'd seen nesting over a period of time. And so they might have seen one, but they are not really concentrating on the atlas. They're more grassland birds and that. So it's potential that they might have seen them. But I was out a lot looking at the short-eareds earlier this year, and there were definitely, I thought, had a real good chance of nesting this year.
So this is a little bit of data from this year. We've got 1,283 priority or specialty blocks already, which work has already been done in. 750 of those, 9 of those have data. This is an important number here that says that none of them are complete so far. The species reported for the year, 237. And although this slide is already a little bit out of date, as Michael mentioned, we're already up to, 2,212 species confirmed in the first year. So we've had fantastic results.
This complete also is in error because there are some that are complete. It's just because eBird didn't set that up so that we can say it's complete yet. But there's not a lot of them that are complete. But
What do you mean by complete?
Well, we're going to get into that.
Okay.
Maybe there's a name or two on this list that you might recognize. Some of these people did an absolutely fantastic amount of work this year. If you know him, it won't surprise you that Tom Presby is at the top of the list. Tom was a paid atlaser, but Tom always kind of goes above and beyond the call of duty. Daryl was not paid, but Daryl definitely goes above and beyond the call. And some of those other names you may be familiar with, maybe some of those folks you're not familiar with. But a lot of people in the field doing a fantastic amount of work, and that's just the top 20 eBirders on the atlas in year one. So now we've got just a group of a few slides about specific species, and we're going to compare the map from Sam Robbins' book, right? This is a little dim here, but you'll probably just remember from your own experience that, as the saying goes, back in the day, 50, 60, 70 years ago, this is what we thought of as the breeding range of osprey in Wisconsin. Along came Atlas I, and lo and behold, we got a bunch of brand new information, and we found ospreys breeding in many counties that were new, so we were able to fill in this map and find that there's a lot of significant atlas breeding spots in the central part of the state as well. And wait till you see the map for Atlas III, because they've done a fantastic job of recovery for this species, and we've got ospreys breeding in about 65 counties now.
This is a sharp shin, and again, its normal breeding range was in the top, a little over a third of the state. But this is one of maybe 3 species that use mature conifer forests. And so over time, there's a lot more mature conifer forests here that have been replanted. And so this bird is starting to move back into areas really that it used to have.
What are the colors? Is blue confirmed?
Yes, yeah, and this map and these maps, the blue are confirmed, and that kind of olive drab color, that's probable, and the green, darker green, is possible. So you're going to see, if you were to take a look at all of the existing atlas maps for Atlas I, you would see, like Michael said, that this plays out with a number of these species that have expanded their range in Wisconsin because of conifer plantations, really. Not just conifer forests, but big maturing, for example, great example here, South Kettle Moraine. It's in Waukesha County. It's far from the North Woods, but it's got extensive conifer plantings, and we got Sharpies breeding in there. So another species, really widespread. Everybody thinks, wow, I know this bird really well, and it's widespread all over the state. Yeah, that's true, but it's not as simple as that. Perhaps it will surprise you when I tell you that this species has declined by 50%. So even though it's still common, right, still widespread, the atlas map isn't going to look much different this time around, but here's a new graphic to introduce you. These are data from the Breeding Bird Survey. And when you see this playground slide here, that I call it, that's the bad news. This species is declining at negative 3.5% per year. So just do a little bit of mental math, and you can see if it continues at that pace for another quarter of a century, that map's going to look a lot different.
This is another species that you can see. This is its distribution previously, and in the atlas we're starting to get movement out into these areas. And part of this is because this species needs mature forests in order to make their holes in the trees. So when they took the forest out, they planted new ones, but those were small. And now they're big enough that these species can build a nest in them. And so we're finally starting to see them move back into this area.
So unlike the flicker, this is exactly the opposite kind of situation. Pileated woodpecker is increasing at 5% per year. So it's moving back into areas of the state where it hasn't had any nesting pileateds in 150 years, right? There are pileateds nesting in Ozaukee County, Walworth County, where there were none of those birds at all for many, many decades. And fortunately, because Wisconsin's forest is maturing, this species is doing very well.
This is another species that is, there's, besides the other ones, we don't know exactly why this is, but there's some species that are moving north, and so in their distribution, and the blue-gray gnatcatcher is one. And I live in Waushara County, and so even though they were found in Waushara County, they weren't very common, when I first moved there in the mid-'80s. But obviously, they are a little more common now, but it's still a nice bird to find.
Probably the species that is on more Christmas cards than any other bird, right? Many people who are not birders will tell you that this is their favorite bird. So it's a very well known and well loved bird. If you were 175 years old, right, and you were a birder, back when you were a kid, you would have only found cardinals in the southernmost tier of Wisconsin counties. So this is a species that has dramatically expanded its range in Wisconsin, probably due to multiple things. Feeding, it does well. It takes to bird feeders. It's probably expanding also because of climate change and because of vegetation change and many other factors in the state of Wisconsin. So during Atlas I, it was the opposite kind of situation. Only those northern tier of counties didn't have them. That's continuing to change. There are multiple records in the second-most tier from Atlas II. So this is a situation that's continually in flux. And a new graphic that hasn't been on any of the previous slides, the number of quads that the bird was confirmed in, 495, or almost 44% on the first atlas, and that is continuing to expand on the second atlas as well.
This is a phenology. One of the things about the first breeding bird atlas, the graphs that we had on some of the others are there, but the phenology for each of the species is on. So in the book, there's a description about the species and information, but on the other side, there's these graphs, which includes this, that shows exactly, the breeding bird code that was there. So distraction display,
Nest with eggs, on nest, nest with young, fledged young. So those are the time periods that all of that was taking place.
So this is a cardinal, and see now, look, this was in March. Somebody had nest building.
And fledged young by about the third week of May, and then all the way until the end of September.
So actually feeding young and flying
Right.
in October.
Wow.
So
Well, this is a species that can have 3 broods in the state of Wisconsin, so there's a long period of
again,
time.
that's information that's from that first that really is useful when you're looking through the book.
So here's one of the take-home messages of this. If you haven't been involved in the atlas yet, but you're a birder, right? Atlasing is really different from regular birding. You know how everybody is nowadays. They're constantly checking their phone, looking at Facebook and seeing who or what is more popular today than it was yesterday. And we're all in a hurry, so we're trying to go out there and find 100 species in a day, and we see that cardinal check, move down the line, You know, there's the blue-gray gnatcatcher, check. You keep moving. Well, atlasing is really, really different. The big take-home about atlasing that is different is the length of time that you spend in doing all of these things. If you're a birder, you've seen thousands of chickadees, right? But how many have you actually seen excavating a nest head?
So how many of you ever seen Baltimore Oriole actually building a nest? How many? All right. This is a little harder. Seeing the red-eyed bird. Yeah. So,
But that's what we want you to look for, right? Not just seeing the bird and counting its presence, but slowing down enough to really observe bird behavior. That's a critical part of getting the information that we need for the atlas to be successful.
So one of the things that we started, when we started doing these presentations, there was things that we didn't point out, and then people would tell us these things. So these are some myths that we found. So I can't atlas because I'm not an expert birder. Well, you don't really, you don't need to be an expert birder to help us out. So one of the things about doing the eBird thing is that when you input your data, there's a checkbox at the end that says, I was able to, these are the ones that I was able to identify. And so if you can't identify them, just don't worry about those. Just put in what you can identify. And we just want to make sure that, you know, you could just do the ones in your backyard. You know, you don't have to go out and do all the esoteric marsh birds or whatever, you know. Anything that you can do to help us is going to be useful. I don't know, can't hear bird songs. Well, one of the things is that all the codes for confirming are not codes that you have to listen for. They're only codes that you have to see. So you have to see the bird feeding the young. You have to see the bird making the nest. So all of those things, you know, it helps to help you notice the bird, but it's not something that needs to be to get confirmed birds. And this was one, especially because one of the first things that we did with the atlas is we tried to get people to sign up for the priority blocks. And people got confused that these are the only ones that we had to do. And that's not true. We want you to participate. We want as many people as we can participate. And like I said, if you just do the birds in your backyard and add to our database, that would be useful for us. And I don't know how to use eBird was another one. And so we try to get people involved, and we're going to be having workshops on this. When Bill and I are done today, we're going to, if any of you are interested, we're going to go over and just show you how to enter data. So we got several computers. We know what the Wi-Fi password is now, so we can spread out and do a couple.
So, speaking of codes, you don't have to memorize these because there are multiple places that they appear. But this is the kind of information that we need. I'd like to make this thing go away here. It's covering up what there, much better. So, CN, carrying nesting material. Wow, that's a great one. In fact, that's probably used to confirm more species than any other code. Or nest building, distraction display. For most of you, what's a common bird that you know of that you see every year, many times, that you've seen conducting a distraction display, and it's actually well known for that?
Builder.
Yes, perfect example, right? Occupied nest. Now, there's more than one code that applies to this picture, for example. Carrying food, that's another one. That's probably the second most used code to confirm species, because it's actually, if you spend a little bit of time during the breeding season, you'd be amazed at how many songbirds you see engaged in the act of carrying food. Much less likely are you to see a nest with young. That's much more difficult to achieve, but important. Feeding young, obviously you have to be able to see the adult placing food inside the gape of some young bird. You can sometimes find nests with eggs. You can, if you spend a lot of time real careful observation, you can see parent birds carrying a fecal sac away from the nest. And another really great way to confirm species is to see recently fledged young. Now it's stuck again. This is not my day, my home.
Well, is tomorrow your day? Well, what did you do last time to get it going?
I don't know. Wish I could tell you.
Get rid of that again,
Yeah.
and then go down to PowerPoint down in the bottom,
Did you hit?
and then click that,
escape?
and then click the second one. It's up above. Nope, click it back again. And then go up, click that.
Perfect.
All right. All right, we'll do an instant replay on that. Or as I would say, instant replay. Oh, that's bad. I hope you didn't record that. So, when we're talking about the different probable codes, S7 is a singing male present 7 days. And that would mean that you would have to be out in the field and have heard it singing in that area, less than or more than 7 days ago before you come back and then you get this code to make it probable. Just hearing it singing is possible. So it's possible, probable, and then confirmed is what we're working for. But multiple singing males, if you have more than 7 in one block, then you can count that as a multiple.
So these are also probable codes. P, a pair in suitable habitat. Why could you not use that for this particular pair of species? Why is this courtship, display, or copulation the more appropriate code for this pair of birds? Can anybody tell me? Well, this pair probably starts their courtship displays many, many miles to the south of where they ultimately end up nesting. So you and I could be in my home county seeing a pair of harriers pass through and do that display, and we would wrongly assume that it's breeding in that county. I assure you there are no nesting northern harriers in Milwaukee County. So this is the appropriate code for that particular pair of birds.
And then, again, these are just probable ones, but especially for birds like woodpeckers and wrens, they may check things out, or the wrens will make fake nests, so it wouldn't be counted as confirmed. But this is, once you see it looking like it's in a possible nesting type, so you can use probable.
So what's different about Atlas 2? Some key things. As Michael started out telling you, in Atlas 1 there were all these people busily jotting down notes on their Atlas field cards, which they then placed into the mail. Postal service. You remember that old-fashioned snail mail? We are not using that anymore. Nobody's sending anything through the mail this time. It's all online. And we're very fortunate to be able to use the eBird platform. The folks at eBird spent over 18 months working on developing a platform specifically for the Wisconsin Breeding Bird Atlas. And you know how Wisconsin is in the forefront of things many times? We are again, because we're the first breeding bird atlas to use eBird as our data entry platform. We're working on an increasing attention to abundance in this atlas. That was one of the things that was a little bit weak in Atlas 1. We did gather some abundance data, but it wasn't consistent. Not everyone did it. So we're using that and a number of other updated methods which will improve our analysis, and we're also increasing our focus on a group of hard-to-survey species that include nocturnals like the nightjars, the owls, which we also did a little bit on the weak side during Atlas 1, and then especially secretive marsh birds. So there are a number of species that are going to get better coverage this time around than they did the first time.
So the methods here, again, we're going to try to get data from some of the other surveys and just have those imported right into the atlas. So we'll be able to do, especially the nightjars and owls and secretive wetland birds, which are really hard to survey. There are going to be other people that will be doing that, and those will get in for that. We're hoping to figure out the differences and the changes of the geographical distribution of each of these species from the first time to now, and see what's going on. And we obviously are going to be using more information, from eBird to put this information out, show exactly what it is that we've already found, what we need to find next. And hopefully we'll be able to analyze all that data as we go.
So here's what it looks like when you go to the home page of the Breeding Bird Atlas. It's a subset of the website of the Wisconsin Society for Ornithology, and a lot of effort went into developing this over the past, like the last 8 months of 2014. A lot of people were involved in working on this. So if you go to WSO's website, maybe you can see that top row of information there. Just click on that Atlas tab, and this is what you get. And you get multiple pieces of information at every one of these tabs. So about the atlas, ways to get involved. You click on this central one, you get to the handbook, which we highly recommend that you download to your computer. You'll use it many, many times. Many kinds of additional resources, including maps. And then last and certainly not least, the submit data. When you click on that tab, it takes you to the data entry portal for eBird for the atlas.
All right, these are your slides.
Okay, so here's some kind of glitchy things that people who are doing this for the first time, they ask us about, how do I do this and how do I do that? How do I add species, for example, that don't appear on the regular eBird checklist? So when you start entering data, you go to your geographic area by using the online map, and a list of species comes up that has been noted in your area many times before. But let's say you scroll down that list of species and you've been lucky enough to find a breeding yellow-breasted chat. Chances are the chat's not going to be on your list. It just hasn't shown up there very many times before. So then you look in the upper right-hand column and you click Add Species, and a box will appear. It'll pop up, and you just type in yellow-breasted chat, and that will be added to the checklist. You can also click on Show Rarities, and the same thing will happen. So let's say, for example, you find a Bell's vireo in a county where Bell's vireos haven't been before, and you're really certain that's what it is. You know the song, you had a good look at the bird, you checked your field guide and the map looks a little bit wrong, but you're still really sure that's what you have. So if you click on show rarities, all of the species that are rare for your geographic area will come up.
So this is, if you click on handbook and materials, this is what you'll see. Here's the official handbook. There's information about specific blocks. So these are maps. If you have a PC, you could use this, but if you have a Mac or mobile stuff, you would use the interactive map here. There's also static maps. So for every single block, so there's 1,300 and something quads, and there are times 6, so there's over 7,000 different blocks total. And so we have maps of all those. We have aerial photos of each of the block and topographic maps of each of the blocks. So if you have problems looking at those maps there, you can just go back to those and just print off a map for yourself.
Here's an important thing to know. There's a list of county coordinators. During the first atlas, we had regional coordinators, and there were about 28 of those. We asked all of those people, just like we asked Betty, are you willing to be a regional coordinator again? And it was amazing how similar their answer was. Again, it was that 2-letter word. Sometimes there were some other less friendly answers. So what we've done this time around is we actually set up a coordinator for every one of the counties, but there are a few very eager people who actually are county coordinator for more than one county.
Yeah, and when we did this, we had people that were regional coordinators come back and say, oh, I can do one county. So it helped us out that way. But Rob Pendergast is the coordinator for this county, and so he wasn't able to be here tonight because he's back in college, so he's taking a class now this evening, so he wasn't able to be here.
So when you start looking for the map of your area, this is going to be one of the first things that you're going to see, and obviously you're going to zoom in a lot on your own.
And as you zoom in, you'll see the quads first, and then I put this next one just to show your county. So I cropped it out and everything, but you can see that there are the ones that are in red are the priority blocks, and then the ones that are in blue are specialty blocks that need to be done. So there are a total of 16 for this county. This is one block that no one has signed up for or anything, but a few people have been in there because it does include stuff in one of the grasslands, and so other people have gone through. We're trying to encourage nature clubs, bird clubs, or whatever, to take a block and just have field trips out to that to help us out in a block like that no one else is going to be doing. So this was one that was available that I thought I'd just use that as an example.
Yeah, hopefully somebody will leave here tonight saying, oh, Michael has planted the seed in my mind, and I'm going to take Bancroft CE. Here's a really useful tool that you can use in many different ways. This shows, this is called the breeding guideline bar chart. It shows what time of year, according to the months, a given species, let's take one rough grouse, right? And these first couple of boxes are N's. That's not likely to be the time of year you find one breeding. And then there are some E's. It can be either, right? And then the B's are not times that are well known. That's part of the breeding range for that species. And then you get to the other end of the year, and it starts to go in the opposite direction. Then for some species that are migrants, there's a fairly long migration period here for, what is this one, common merganser. Then there's a couple of time periods when it could be either migrating or breeding, and likewise at the other end. But we know that this solid block of bees for breeding season is continually changing. And we've already altered this breeding bird guideline chart several times just in the first year that we're using it.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. The thing is, this is just a guide. It's not exact. And so that's what we try to tell, because in your area, you know what birds are going to be breeding there probably. And so, you can tell if it was or it was not breeding. So there might be differences. This is a field checklist that you have, you can print off. You make sure you put the block and the date, miles, start time, and end time for it, how many miles that you walked, if you walked at all, and then if you were doing nocturnal. These are all information that goes into the eBird portal. This here, we would like you to keep track of, because this helps us when we're trying to get funding. We talk about how much other people are doing for us, what our field observers are donating, and how many miles that you drove to get there, and how many hours back and forth that you did to get to your place where you're going to do your survey is important to us, and we try to keep track of that and then collect that at the end of the year.
And that can be used as match on a lot of different kinds of grant proposals. So although you may say to yourself, well, that's really not absolutely necessary, it really is helpful to us. So we really like people to keep track of all of that information as they're working in the field.
This is a quick reference guide. It has a lot of information, and it has all the breeding codes over on the side, so you got that with you in the field, you can take a quick look at that and see. It also has habitat codes, and habitat, we did such a good job in the first breeding bird atlas with habitat, we don't necessarily need to do that, except for some species requiring additional information. So most of these are species of special concern in some way, so you can't read that from here.
Well, I'll read a few to you though, because you may want to know, in case you find, for example, a Carolina wren, a hooded warbler, olive-sided flycatcher, western grebe. Those are species that are all considerably rare, and if you report those on the atlas, we want a couple extra layers of information from you, which will include these habitat codes, but will include some documentation from you, perhaps a photograph. So we won't take it at face value right away if you report some of these species, especially in areas of the state where we don't expect to find them. So expect to be questioned a little bit if you report some unusual species for your geographic area of the state, and you will have a separate form to fill out if you report some of those species.
This is block summary card. This is basically like the cards that you had in the first atlas. This is just for whoever has a specific block to let them know what species they've already seen. So after they've been out in the field a number of times, maybe they have 2 or 3 blocks that they're doing, they think, oh, did I get the ovenbird confirmed in this block or that block? And they can go back and they can check. Otherwise, they might be there and sit for an hour or 2 hours waiting and trying to confirm this species that they already confirmed. So this is just a help for them. It's just a personal one. It's not something that you have to be.
Yeah, remember, don't send it to us in the mail. This is something that's for you only to keep. It's your personal record of your own information.
One of the things about eBird was that there are different portals, and that really caused some confusion at the beginning. This is a regular eBird portal. This is, from a while ago that we did this. But, so they all have different stories. Every time, if you go to ebird.org, this is the page that you would get. And they have stories that pertain to the United States. The next slide is the eBird portal, that's the Wisconsin portal. And this one has information pertaining just to Wisconsin here. So many people from Wisconsin that use eBird a lot would go through this portal. When I started using eBird, I always just go through the other one because that's what I did. But if you're going to enter any information into the atlas, you have to go through the atlas portal. And so
There's a number of different ways you can get there. You can click on this link. You can put your cursor up there, hover there, and just click there. Or you can go through the WSO page.
yes, if you go to the WSO page that we had up before, you can just click enter eBird data or whatever it says. So, and so this is the Wisconsin Breeding Bird Atlas portal. Up in the top here, you'll see it'll say /atlas, or I think it's atlas.
Right.
So that you know it's in the atlas portal. So the thing is that when you're in the atlas portal, there's the information pretty much looks the same, except for if you're going to do explore data. This is just on the atlas. So if you click on explore data, you end up with being able to search any block that you might be in, any county to see. And so I think some of the next slides actually.
And you can even explore all of the data for Wisconsin. So
Right. Oh, yeah.
if you click on this tab, Explore Data, there'll be a field that you can fill in, and you can type in either Wisconsin, if you want to look at this broad array of data, or your county that you're interested in, or the name of your block, but you need to know the name that you're interested in doing.
One of the things is that these different things here, mostly these are Ryan Brady's and Nick Anich that have been putting these out, trying to get more information and more pertinent to the atlas. So if we ran into difficulties with some things, they tried to make sure that they added some new things to help.
So once you get to the point where you actually want to start entering data, you click on this tab, Submit Observations. But you can also, if you're interested in, it's midwinter, and you have some evening when you would just like to find out what's been showing up in your area, you can either click on Explore a Region and enter a county there, or now, just fairly recently, you can click on Species Maps and get all of the data is already up for the whole first year of data gathering just for Wisconsin.
So in the Explore data, this is all the blocks that were in Portage County. So you could choose either from the first atlas or the second one. This is the second one, but you can actually redo it and just check to see what was done the first time and what they found. So, but these are the blocks. You can see that there's a number of them that nothing has been done yet. So there's still a lot of work to do.
So you see in parentheses behind each name a P. So, and this tab is highlighted, priority specialty blocks. These are the priority blocks and specialty blocks in this county. And there's a number of different kinds of information here, right? Diurnal hours, right? So Abbott or Arnott CE has 31.13 hours of work and 66 total species, 27 of which have been confirmed. Stevens Point CE has 29 species confirmed and a total of 65 species and 25.25 hours of atlas work already expended there.
So the one map I had was for Bancroft CE, and so this is just the information from the first time. So notice there are only 53 species found in there, 30 were confirmed. And so right now, these are all from people that just were out going through Buena Vista, to look for things like the loggerhead shrike that was breeding out there this year. But as they went through, they did some data entry for that block. And so but there's only one confirmed species.
So Bancroft CE needs a lot more work. So if you get to that, I kind of got ahead of myself a few minutes ago. If you get to that submit observations, this is the first thing that you see. If you've already entered data many times before, you'll have this horrendous drop-down list. If you click on my drop-down list, there's about 4,000 locations. Because I have data in eBird that goes back to the 1950s. So I've been entering data a lot.
He didn't enter the data into eBird in 1950.
True, good point. Or you can enter on multiple geographic levels, your county. That's the easiest way to get where you want. And then a map will come up, and then you just place your cursor at the point where you are or where you're working, and then you'll zoom in, and that's the next place that you will go.
So again, once you got your spot, on the map, then you can put in other data. So if you were traveling on a property specific, so we like to do that especially for public lands, because especially for public lands, so that we have that information all in one place where the people that are going to be managing those public lands know what was found there. So we'd like to try to make sure that it was just on that property. So if we're in Buena Vista grasslands and it ends here, and then there's another, we'd like you to do another checklist for those areas that are not on that property. So in that case, you do travel general, so you're not just in one property.
Obviously, we want you to put in the date in those drop-down boxes there. If you get to this other, there's another drop-down set here, which includes things like area. So if you know the area that you're working in, and you know it's 47 acres, and you choose area, and then there's actually a block for you to enter that
This,
amount of acres.
let me, Bill, we got this incidental here. We really are stressing that you try to use this incidental. So again, in your backyard, if you see a robin nesting, this is where you can put it. And so if you just click on incidental there, that information can go into our database, and that would be great. And so once you're done, you'll see the list of what you had. This is just cropped off of what the beginning of the list was. If you had any codes, they would show here.
So if you've got a number of species, let's say you saw 20 species that day, right? And you found breeding Canada geese and breeding mallards, but you also saw some wood ducks, but you saw no information that led you to believe that they're breeding there. You just enter the number, and you don't use any codes in that case. Or for these ringneck ducks, or these buffleheads, or these hooded mergansers. But you do have a code for mallard and Canada goose. So you just fill in the information that you actually have.
This was something that was at the end of the year that you just checked.
Right.
So
For some folks, they're a little bit behind in entering data. They may have kept a paper record of it all, and they kept telling themselves, yeah, one of these days I'll get around to, some rainy night, I finished that novel I was reading, and there's crap on TV, so I'll finally get around to entering that data. Don't worry, you're not alone. There's lots of other people in that same very large club. You want information about help with doing this? There's a lot of ways to proceed. One of the first steps is send an email to your county coordinator. He or she can answer a lot of questions. You can email Nick Anich, you can email Ryan Brady, you can email me, you can email Michael. And we'll be glad to help you out. And as Mike showed you back at the front end of this, there's a whole list of data entry tutorials that are online and able for you to, they're available for you to read whenever you want to. There's also a really useful discussion forum that probably should be used more than it has been this year. Some of the more active people have been posting information to the forum. And if you've got a large quantity of data and you kept it in spreadsheet form, for example, some people like to do that, and they haven't gotten around to entering, just let us know and we'll help with that process too. So there's lots of ways to get involved here and to deal with any of these questions that you may have.
So again, these are all things from the end if you're done doing the atlasing. You want to make sure that you fill out your volunteer effort form and any information about priority species that you might have forgot to do. So, and so this was just information about species of like special concern and stuff, and what needed to be done for those.
So we already showed you that quick reference guide. And if you have questions about these kinds of things, for those rarer species, we want to know an exact location. We want to know more information, especially about the habitat. You know, it gives you a description of that information and additional supporting details on the bird to help us confirm the identification. So again, if you find what you consider to be rarities, and if they show up on that list, on that quick reference guide, then you already know that we're going to ask you additional questions about that species and about that observation.
So,
And here are some of those species. So you'll see some that'll probably, maybe they'll surprise you a little bit. But we definitely need more information. You know, this species used to be in the top 10, Western meadowlark. It's now somewhere near the bottom of the list of species. It's declined by 95% in Wisconsin over the last 45 years. So it's not really a common bird anymore. Yellow-headed blackbird has really declined. Black tern has really declined. But a lot of these other species, you know, they're already becoming uncommon enough that we need additional information to back up your observation.
and then just review your data that you put in. So you want to make sure that you got everything exactly correct when you do that.
So we really would like you to go over the summary for the block that you atlased, and you can ask for help from your county coordinator to help you do that. You can always access all of the checklists you entered by going to Manage My Checklists on the right side of the eBird tab. And if you've got questions or something doesn't seem right, just get in touch with one of us and we'll help investigate and hopefully be able to answer that question. So someone asked us, what does it mean for a block to be complete? And here's our answer. We want you to spend at least 20 hours in the field, right? You could spend a lot more than 20 hours, and we'll get to that in a minute. We don't want you to spend hundreds of hours on one particular block, though. And we want you to find at least 80% of the species that were found in that block during Atlas 1, and we would like you to be able to confirm at least 50% of those. So let's say you say, well, you know, I've got my favorite park, and it's a great park for birding, and I go there a lot, and I'd really like to work on the atlas in my favorite park. That's great, that's fine, but let's say you get to the end of a year and a half, and you realize that you've spent 60 hours in your favorite park. You could continue to work there, but the amount of additional effort that will be required for you to add more species and confirm them is kind of where the law of diminishing returns sets in. And what we really would hope you do is after you have reached that point, you move on to a new block. Because there are many, many blocks, as Michael showed you, that still have no data, and a lot of them are priority blocks that really need the data. So if you've gotten to the point and you're very far beyond 20 hours, it really would be useful to move to a new block.
So what you want to try to do is make sure that you do visit different habitat types in that block. So again, the more different habitat types that you go to, the more species of birds that you're likely to see. There are some that won't be, in the grassland that are going to be in the woodland and vice versa. You need to do them at different times of the year because different species are going to be confirmable at different times of the year in that area for sure. And we also are trying to make sure that we do more stuff with the owls. So we're asking to have 2 night visits to look for owls and nightjars like whippoorwills.
So now it's your turn. Hopefully you've got dozens and dozens of questions that you can throw at us and see if you can stump us.
Well, you can see that the technology sometimes stumps us, so.
Yeah, it isn't that hard to stump us, actually.
If you enter data into the eBird general, it's not gonna go to the Wisconsin eBird or the Breeding Bird Atlas, is that correct?
The Wisconsin eBird and the eBird are the same.
Okay.
All that data goes into the same thing. It's only, a portal just means of where you start. And so the Wisconsin portal just has all the information basically relating to Wisconsin information on there. And so if people start there, then they can see anything that they might have added that might be useful for you there.
But you have to go to the Breeding Bird portal to get to enter data into that. Is that
Right.
correct?
Yes.
And one of the things that you'll notice, and one of the things that actually confused people early in this year, is there are an old set of breeding codes in regular eBird, right? And so people entered some data in those,
Right. Well,
and that confused them.
they actually changed those, Bill, remember? So, when we first started, that's what we used to say. But they actually changed their codes to correspond to what we have. So their codes are the same now. And so that's a problem, you get into there and you look and, here's the breeding code. And you don't know. But when you're done, and like your county coordinator would say, we got breeding codes in here, and it's not, it should go into the Breeding Bird Atlas. So you would go to your checklist and you can change the portal. There's a place to just click a button, and so it'll be simple. But your county coordinator would let you know that, so if you made a mistake. And there were a number of people that did that. In fact, I did that myself a couple times because, I just got going on to some stuff and I got looking at other things and then I was back in the other portal, so.
Yes, sir.
So do we need to contact our county coordinator if we want to put any observations on this, or can we just go on here on our own?
Oh, you can go on your own. The county coordinator is there to answer questions for you. And it would be good if you're interested in actually taking charge of a block, if you want to be the primary atlaser for a block, reach out to the county coordinator and say, I've got a favorite place and I would like to work in there and I'd like to be the primary atlaser there. That doesn't mean you're the only person who can ever go there, but that means you're kind of taking on the responsibility of assuring that that block will be completed. Now, you don't have to do that, right? If you're at the point where you're saying to yourself, I'd like to be a little bit more casual about this to start, just go ahead, enter data on your own. But when you have questions, and it's almost inevitable that sometime during the season, you will have some questions. And that's why the county coordinator is there to help you with those things. But You don't absolutely have to talk to him or her before you get started.
Well, to be honest, if you look at the size of a block, if you're the person who commits to that block, it seems like that's a huge commitment. Because if you have a block that has a lot of diversity and habitat, I mean, what those blocks must be, what?
They're 3 by 3, 3 miles.
3 miles by
3 miles
3
by
miles.
3 miles. You
Yeah.
have, you know, a fair amount of forest and marsh and swamps.
But there actually are a lot of people
That's a lot of work, yeah.
who are committing to be the primary atlaser, but it's not required for you to do
It
that.
just seems like a really big job.
It can be,
It's a
and
lot
it
of
can be
territory to
depending,
cover.
just as you've described, if you have a block that has real diversity, let's say you have a block and it has this immense conifer swamp that's really difficult to access, maybe you don't want to go there, right? Maybe you want to work around the corners of it, you know? But then there are also some blocks that have real low habitat diversity. It's all ag, you know? It could be all agricultural and it'll be a piece of cake to finish that one, right? So it really varies a lot. And remember that all the priority blocks are chosen randomly. So we didn't go into priority blocks and say, this is going to be a good block because it's got X number of acres of forest, X number of acres of wetland. That's why those specialty blocks were chosen. They have significant, important habitats that we already know are used by a wide diversity of birds. The priority blocks were chosen purely randomly, and the way that came about, it actually goes back many, many years to other atlases conducted in the United Kingdom and in other states in the United States. It's just a convention that everybody follows now. Yes, sir.
Do you have any all private blocks or any other blocks where the land distribution or the ownership pattern would possibly skew the observations?
Well, I don't know if it would skew it, but one of the things that's involved in being successful with the atlas is if you've got a block that's mostly private land, we recommend that you get in touch with the landowner and get permission to work in there. Obviously, there are some that are completely private land, and there may be a few where access will not be permitted. And then the atlas team will actually have to go back to that individual and try to obtain permission. In most cases, in Atlas 1, we were successful at doing that. But for one individual, you know, you may actually know the landowner, and maybe you can just walk up to him or her and say, can I have permission? And they'll say, sure, I know you, of course you can. So it can be to varying degrees greater or lesser difficulty to accomplish that.
Is the list of species found by block from the first atlas available in that book, or is it somewhere online?
It's online on the eBird portal. When you do explore data, you would go to that block. So let's say it was Bancroft CE, you would just go to that. And then there's a drop-down menu at the top that will default to this atlas. It'll say 2015 through 2019. And you will just click on that and you'll see that it also says 1995 to 2000. And you would just choose that, and then all the things that came up would be from that first atlas. And then if you click on the species that are there, you'll see the original list of who did it and when. So it's really good.
And there's another way to get at that information. You can go back to the old Atlas One website, which is still live, and you can sort that information in like 15 different ways. You can go to data summaries at the bottom of the page of the Atlas One website, and it can show you all of the species by block or by quad. So there's multiple ways of getting at this information. And if you get stuck, just let us know and we can help you do that.
Any others? Yes?
So if you have a bird that you see is exhibiting nesting behavior, then you probably have to somehow say where that spot is, like you have GPS coordinates, or how do you
Only
specify
if it's
where you saw?
if it's it's one of those specialty or
Okay.
priority birds.
So otherwise, it's just a block?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just in your block. Well, again, when you're putting in a checklist, it's from a specific area in that block. So, you know, it might be on that property that you are, but there's some, especially when they talk about, private lands. I have Wilshire County, and so I'm gonna be riding my bike down the road and just looking at birds as I go. And so one of my areas are gonna be, you know, this 2-mile road here, I'm gonna bird along that, and so that's gonna be one of my checklists. And then, you know, another one might be, this, you know, this land over in this part of the county. So, but I would have different checklists for different areas.
You just say where you're at, you see that behavior.
When you use the map, one of the things that's really different about Atlas 2 is we're really trying to get everybody to be more precise about the location that they're in. So we're asking you not to enter data at the block level. It's not precise enough. Because in order to do management, we really want to know much more precise information. So you use your map to zoom in. Let's say you're in the northeast corner of your block, and Mr. Thompson has 67 acres of deciduous woodland there, right? And you make a mental note, or you can actually draw a sketch of a map, and you can print out a map for every block, as Mike told you before. And once you've got that printed map, you can make a little pencil sketch. Okay, here's Mr. Thompson's woods, and when you enter your data, you actually call it Mr. Thompson's woods, or Joel Smith's woods, or Dan Smith's creek. You know, you can come up with a million different names of your own, but then what happens is, the next time you go back there, you already have a checklist entered. You don't have to start from scratch again. You just go back to Mr. Thompson's woods, because you've already entered data for there, and the data already exists, and that will come up in that drop-down list, and so that saves you some time the second time around.
Yeah, and I want to add one thing to that. When you're doing the actual breeding bird atlas, you're going to be entering it in a specific block. So it's better to name it that block first, and so then whatever place after that. So like when I'm looking, I've done stuff in all 16 blocks, 12 blocks in my county. So I put in the data already, and I put in you know, Coloma CE, and then I put in what property that I'm on or what place I'm doing it that I know.
So that's specific enough. Just
Right,
on
so
this
that
property.
when you go down your checklist then, you already know what block you're in, you just go to the CE block, to the Coloma block, and then you would be able to find which one you put in before. But it makes it much easier to put that in, because if you have, like, you know, like Bill has 4,000 different places he's been in the state, then, you know, it's hard for him to look through the list or, you know, remember, oh, what did I name that place? So, but if you name it first with the block that you have, then the name, you'll remember which one. Any others?
Well, I thank these two gentlemen for spending all this time here. If you have more questions, I think they'll be hanging around and maybe we can get a little more
We actually
detail.
will give you some.
Yeah, some hands-on and real time looking at eBird and at the eBird and the sport. Any specific questions you have, I'll figure it out. It sounds a little intimidating. Maureen and I have a couple blocks, and when you're actually out doing it, it's not, the more you do it, it really simplifies it. It goes very smooth. You get a few places. There's not a whole lot of places you're going to go. We have one block that's 3 counties. Every time I get to the county line, I have to start another list another time. You know, it's the same block, but because I've crossed the county line, eBird wants to know what county I'm in. So you've got this crossover, but it's really not that bad. It's practice, and you go out and do it a few times, and it really, like Bill, you're asking about these areas. We've got one in the Mead. There's a couple trails that you're going to use in the Mead, because that's the best access. So you go on in this block, on this trail, and, you know, this dike, and bring it down. So unless you find something really unusual, that's pretty good.
Yes, sir.
I have a computer in my house, and I have a cell phone that I carry with me. I have none of these pads or whatever it is. What's the basic thing I would need to be able to communicate when I'm in the field with this eBird site?
started to do it when you're in the field. There's a new app being developed as we speak that you will be able to use from a smartphone if you want to enter data from your phone or a tablet. But that's not required, right? You can still write your information down on a piece of paper and enter the data when you get home. And for a lot of folks who are a little bit uneasy with all of the functionality of their smartphone, that might be preferred, especially for the first dozen or so times that you do this. Use the tried and true clipboard, print out a couple of those data sheets that we mentioned, write all of your stuff down, and then when you have some leisure, go on your computer and enter your data at home.
Okay, and if you want to hang around a while, we have treats today on K-Android. Brought some stuff, so hang around and talk with each other and talk with these very informative gentlemen. I appreciate the time that they're putting into that. It's probably the answer.